The morning sun barely pierced through the thick gray clouds as the Johnson family gathered around the small, wobbly dining table. It was a typical Saturday. Pancakes on the stove, music playing faintly in the background, and laughter filling the air. Angela Johnson, a single mother of two, cherished these moments with her twin sons, Marcus and Malik. At just 15 years old, they were the heart of her world, smart, funny, and full of life. But this Saturday wasn't like the others. The laughter abruptly stopped when Marcus' phone buzzed on the counter. The boys exchanged a quick glance, one that Angela didn't miss. She watched as Marcus hesitated before picking up the phone, his usual playful demeanor replaced with a tension that made her stomach drop. "Who's texting this early?" Angela asked casually, flipping another pancake. "Just seen," Marcus mumbled, referring to his best friend from school. He tried to sound normal, but his tone betrayed him. Malik leaned in to read the message over his brother's shoulder. His face hardened, and Angela could feel the shift in the room. She set the spatula down and turned toward them, her voice firm but calm. "What's going on, boys?" For a moment, they didn't answer. Marcus looked at Malik, as if asking for permission. Finally, Malik broke the silence. "Mom, Scene said there was another incident," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Angela's heart sank. She knew exactly what he meant. Living in their neighborhood, the stories of police encounters were all too familiar. Too often, those stories ended in headlines no family ever wanted to see. "Who was it this time?" Angela asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. "Scene said it was his cousin, Jamal," Marcus replied. "They were just hanging out at the park, not bothering anyone. And then, the cops showed up." Angela clenched her fists, the weight of their words sinking in. Jamal was only a year older than the twins. She'd met him once or twice, a polite, soft-spoken kid who loved basketball and dreamed of making it to the NBA. "Did Scene say if he's okay?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "He doesn't know yet, but he said it didn't look good, Mom." Angela's mind raced as she tried to process what she was hearing. She felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, anger at a system that seemed to target boys who looked just like her sons. But more than that, she felt fear. Fear that one day it could be Marcus or Malik's name in those texts. Just as she opened her mouth to say something, the front door creaked open. "Dad's here," Malik announced, his voice flat. Angela froze. Darius Johnson wasn't a regular presence in their lives. His visits were rare, unannounced, and often left more tension than relief in their wake. But today, as his tall frame filled the doorway, there was something different about him. His usual carefree swagger was gone, replaced by a grim determination that sent a chill through the room. "What's going on?" Darius asked, his deep voice cutting through the uneasy silence. Angela hesitated. She wasn't sure she wanted to involve him in this. Darius had always been quick to anger, and the last thing she needed was for him to make things worse. But before she could speak, Marcus blurted out the truth. "Sheen's cousin, Jamal. The police. They did it again." Darius' jaw tightened, and his eyes flicked between his sons and Angela, as if piecing together the story. When he finally spoke, his words were measured but carried an intensity that made everyone sit up straighter. "Where did it happen?" he asked. "At the park," Malik answered. "But Dad," Darius held up a hand, cutting him off. "Stay here," he said firmly, already turning toward the door. "Wait," Angela called after him. "What are you going to do?" Darius paused, his hand on the doorknob. He turned back to face them, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again," he said. And with that, he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Angela and the twins exchanged uneasy glances, none of them sure what Darius meant or what he planned to do. But one thing was clear: whatever was about to happen, it was far from over. The sound of the doors slamming shut echoed through the small apartment, leaving an uneasy quiet in its wake. Angela stood frozen, staring at the spot where Darius had just been. Her mind swirled with questions she couldn't answer, fears she couldn't suppress. What exactly was he going to do? Would he make things worse, or was there a chance he could help? "Mrs. Johnson," the officer asked, his voice calm but firm. Angela swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "Yes. We need to talk," he said. And just like that, the fragile sense of control Angela had been clinging to shattered. Angela's stomach twisted as she stared at the officer. The dim porch light highlighted his sharp features, but his face gave nothing away. She tightened her grip on the doorframe, forcing herself to stay calm, even though her instincts screamed otherwise. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. The officer shifted slightly, his hand resting casually on his belt. "We're looking for Mr. Darius Johnson. Do you know where he is?" Angela's heart skipped a beat. She knew this wasn't good. Darius had left with a purpose, and now the police were at her door. She shook her head, trying to buy time. "He's not here. What's this about?" The officer hesitated, his eyes flicking past her into the house. "We just need to ask him a few questions about an incident earlier tonight." Angela swallowed hard, her mind racing. She didn't know what Darius had done, but the way the officer's voice tightened around the word incident made her chest tighten. She wanted to ask more, to push for answers, but the twins were standing in the hallway, their wide eyes fixed on the doorway. She couldn't risk saying the wrong thing and making this worse. "I haven't seen him," she said finally. "If he shows up, I'll let him know you came by." The officer nodded, but his expression didn't soften. "If you hear from him, Mrs. Johnson, it's important that he comes to the station voluntarily. Otherwise—" He trailed off, leaving the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Angela forced herself to nod, even as her knees felt weak. "I understand." The officer handed her a card with the precinct's number before turning to leave. Angela closed the door slowly, pressing her back against it as she tried to steady her breathing. The twins rushed over, their voices overlapping in a flurry of questions. "Mom, what was that about?" Marcus asked, his voice tinged with panic. "Is Dad in trouble?" Malik added, his face pale. Angela raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but we're not going to panic. Let me think for a minute." She moved to the couch, sinking into the worn cushions as her mind raced. The officer's visit only added to the tangled web of uncertainty. If Darius was involved in something, it could escalate quickly, and with Jamal's situation still unresolved, the weight of it all felt crushing. As the boys hovered nearby, Angela's phone buzzed. She grabbed it, hoping for a message from Darius, but instead, it was a text from Lisa. "They won't let us see him. They're saying he was resisting arrest." "I don't know what to do." Angela's hands tightened around the phone. She could hear the frustration and helplessness in Lisa's words, and it mirrored her own. She wanted to help, to find a way to fix this, but every avenue felt like a dead end. Before she could reply, Marcus spoke up. "Mom, we can't just sit here. What if Dad's in trouble? What if Jamal needs us?" Angela looked at him, her heart aching at the mix of fear and determination in his eyes. He was only 15, but moments like this forced him to grow up too fast. She wanted to shield him from the harsh realities of the world, but the truth was, they were already at his doorstep. "I know, baby," she said softly, "but running out there without a plan won't help anyone. We need to be smart about this." Malik sat down beside her, his voice quieter than usual. "What if Dad's trying to fix this? What if he's doing something to help Jamal?" Angela wished she could believe that. Darius loved his boys, and she knew he hated seeing their community suffer. But his methods were rarely careful or thought out. If he had gone to confront the police or take matters into his own hands, it could backfire spectacularly. The thought made her chest tighten. She couldn't lose him, not like this. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. This time, it was an unknown number. For a moment, she hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Then she answered. "Hello." There was a pause, followed by a familiar voice. "Angela, it's me." Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived. Darius' voice was tense, his words clipped. She could tell he was on edge. "Darius, where are you?" "The police were just here looking for you." "I know," he said quickly. "I saw them. That's why I'm calling. I don't have much time." Angela's pulse quickened. "What do you mean you don't have time? What's going on?" "I went to the precinct," he admitted, his voice low. "I wanted to see what they were doing with Jamal. But things got complicated." Angela closed her eyes, her heart sinking. "Darius, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything wrong," he said defensively. "I just wanted answers." But they weren't talking, and one of them got in my face. It got heated. "Now they're saying I'm a problem." "Of course they are," Angela said, frustration creeping into her tone. "You can't just walk into a police station and start yelling at people." "I wasn't yelling," Darius shot back. "I was asking questions, but they don't like questions, especially from people like me." Angela pinched the bridge of her nose, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Where are you now?" "I'm laying low," he said. I need you to trust me, Angie. I'm going to figure this out." Angela's grip on the phone tightened. "Darius, they're looking for you. If you don't go back and sort this out, it's only going to get worse." "I know," he said softly, "but I can't do that yet. Not until I know Jamal's okay." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Angela stared at the phone, her mind racing. Darius' stubbornness had always been both a strength and a curse, and now it was dragging them deeper into this mess. The twins watched her anxiously, waiting for an update. She forced a reassuring smile, though it felt hollow. "Your dad's okay," she said. "He's just trying to help." But even as she said the words, doubt crept in. If Darius kept pushing, he could make himself a target. And with the police already on edge, that was a risk none of them could afford. As the night stretched on, Angela's thoughts grew darker. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the web they were caught in was tightening with every passing moment. And as much as she wanted to believe Darius would find a way out, she couldn't ignore the nagging fear that their family was on the brink of something they couldn't undo. The weight in the room was unbearable. The boys had retreated to their bedroom, but Angela could still hear their hushed voices through the thin walls. She knew they were trying to make sense of everything, trying to hold on to some semblance of control in a situation spiraling out of it. She wanted to tell them it would be okay, but every time she opened her mouth to reassure herself, the words felt false. Her phone sat silent on the table, a cold reminder that Darius was out there, somewhere, trying to fix this. She trusted his intentions, but his actions, that was another story. Angela knew how desperation could drive even the best of people to do things they might regret. And right now, desperation was the one thing tying them all together. The knock on the door earlier had left her shaken. She couldn't shake the officer's piercing gaze, the way his tone held just enough civility to mask something darker. Angela had lived long enough to recognize when someone wasn't telling her the whole story. What did they really want from Darius? And more importantly, how deep was Jamal's trouble if they were already connecting it to her husband? Another buzz from her phone shattered the quiet, and her heart leaped. She grabbed it quickly, hoping it was Darius again. But it wasn't him. It was Lisa, and Angela hesitated for a moment before answering. "Lisa," she said, her voice soft. "Angela, you're not going to believe this," Lisa said, her words coming fast and frantic. "What is it?" Angela asked, already bracing herself. "They moved Jamal. One of the boys who was with him called me. They saw them take him out of the station. They think he's being transferred somewhere else, but no one's saying why or where." Angela felt her stomach drop. "Transferred? Why would they do that? Is he okay?" "I don't know," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "No one will talk to me. They're treating him like some kind of criminal, but Jamal's just a kid. The anger in Lisa's voice was palpable, and Angela felt it too. It was the same helpless fury that had been simmering beneath her own fear all night. Did they say anything at all? Angela pressed. Just that it's procedural, Lisa spat. But we both know what that means. They're trying to bury this. Angela closed her eyes, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream to demand answers, but all she could do was try to stay composed. We'll figure this out, Lisa, she said, though the words felt like a fragile promise. I'll try to find Darius. Maybe he's learned something. After hanging up, Angela paced the living room, her mind racing. She needed to act, but every step felt like walking a tightrope over a canyon. If she made the wrong move, the consequences could be devastating. Her thoughts were interrupted by another knock at the door. This time, it was softer, almost hesitant. Angela's chest tightened as she approached, every nerve on edge. She peeked through the peephole and saw a young man standing there, his hoodie pulled up to shield his face. "Who is it?" she called through the door, her voice wary. "It's Tyrell," the boy said quickly. "I'm one of Jamal's friends. Please, I need to talk to you." Angela hesitated, glancing back toward the hallway where the boys were still talking in low tones. After a moment, she unlocked the door and opened it slightly, keeping the chain in place. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone cautious. Tyrell looked nervous, his eyes darting around the street behind him. "I don't have much time. I was with Jamal earlier, and I saw what happened." Angela's breath caught. "What do you mean? What happened?" "They were harassing us," Tyrell said, his words tumbling out. "The cops. They rolled up on us, asking all these questions, acting like we were up to something. Jamal was trying to stay cool, but one of them started getting in his face." Angela felt her pulse quicken. "And then what?" "Jamal said something. Something about knowing his rights, and that's when it all went bad. They grabbed him, threw him down, and—" Tyrell swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "They hit him, Mrs. Johnson. They hit him, and when he tried to get up, they said he was resisting." Angela's knees felt weak, and she leaned against the door for support. "Did you tell anyone? Did you report this?" "To who?" Tyrell asked bitterly. "The same people who did it. They don't care about us. They just want to make it look like we're the problem." Angela opened the door a little wider, her fear momentarily overridden by the urgency of his words. "Do you know where they took him, or why they're moving him?" Tyrell shook his head. "I don't know, but I heard one of them say something about keeping it quiet, like they don't want anyone to know what really happened." Angela's chest tightened. This was worse than she'd imagined. If they were trying to cover their tracks, it meant Jamal was in even more danger than she'd feared. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Tyrell nodded, his expression troubled. "I just want him to be okay. He didn't deserve this." As he disappeared into the night, Angela closed the door and leaned against it, her thoughts racing. She needed to do something, but she couldn't do it alone. She picked up her phone and dialed Darius again, praying he would answer this time. The line rang, each buzz a painful reminder of how far away he felt. Finally, just as she was about to give up, he picked up. "Angela," he said, his voice low. "Darius, listen to me," she said quickly. "I just talked to one of Jamal's friends. They're moving him, and they're trying to cover this up. We need to act fast." "I know," Darius said, his tone grim. "I've been hearing the same thing. That's why I'm heading to the community center. A few of us are meeting there to figure out our next move." Angela's heart sank. She knew what that meant. When the community came together, it was usually to demand justice, but it also meant tensions would be running high. "Darius, please," she said, her voice pleading. "Be careful. If they're already after you, this could make it worse." "I don't have a choice," he said firmly. "They're not going to stop unless we make them." Before she could argue, The line went dead again. Angela sat down heavily, her hands trembling. The walls felt like they were closing in, the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. In the hallway, the twins peeked around the corner, their faces pale. "Mom," Marcus said hesitantly, "what's going on?" Angela looked at them, her heart breaking at the fear in their eyes. She forced a smile, though it felt like a lie. "Everything's going to be okay," she said softly, more for herself than for them. But deep down, she knew the storm was far from over. And as the night stretched on, the tension only grew, the air heavy with the promise of something inevitable.